Hello, everybody. It's Saturday, the 11th of July. I'm coming to you from the Gold Coast in Australia. I'm sitting in a beautiful yacht club and I have birds in the background in the trees. It's really a very pretty setting, but it's also very difficult to find places where there aren't a lot of people around. And the more that we have our societies open up, given that in some places the first wave of COVID-19 is deemed to have occurred, and governments want economies to get back into the swing, we really are managing a very volatile situation because human beings are at the root of how well we deal with this pandemic. Perfect example is this morning I was standing waiting to pay for something at a 7-Eleven, and directly behind me, like literally could have leant forward and kissed the back of my hair. This guy actually coughed into my hair. I was wearing a full mask and I was the only one in the small 7-Eleven who was wearing a mask. And I do that wherever I go where I know there's people around. Here, there's literally nobody around. There are a few yachts in front of me, but people are well distant. But this fellow coughed into my hair, and I turned and looked, didn't say anything, and he immediately started spouting that, oh, it's a smoker's cough. Here, I had a heavy night drinking, and I did a lot of smoking, and that's all it is. And I said, well, you don't know that, when he was justifying why he should have the right, in his mind, to cough at me and not socially distance, cough onto me. It's not the first time that's happened. I see it often on walking paths. That's why now I actually choose to walk on beaches, and I walk very early at night when there's nobody around. People's hygiene habits are very hard to break, and this is almost like a wake-up call for all of humanity to be considerate, to love yourself enough to take care of yourself, and by so doing, you're more likely to take care of other people. That's the crux of personal power, is loving yourself enough and loving yourself to nurture yourself. Because if you don't want to nurture who you are, how on earth can you nurture and care about and respect anybody else? So when you feel that you aren't taking care of you, just be mindful of how that impacts your interaction with other people. Because by golly, if you're being selfish enough to abuse your own body and not take care of yourself, you can't possibly be in the right mindset to be thinking about other people. There's so much on the social media about the wearing of masks, and I've been wearing a mask now since about the third week of March, and I am not going to stop wearing that mask in public, in enclosed spaces where I feel there is not sufficient social distancing. If I go into any kind of store, department store, shopping mall, I don't go out very often, and I do that to protect myself and also to contribute to the collective protection of humanity. And if we all did that, if we all took that one basic step, then we would actually be a lot better off. People who were around when AIDS hit the headlines, and in Australia we had the thing called the Grim Reaper advertising, and it depicted the Grim Reaper using a bowling ball and innocent people being, the 10 pins, and the Grim Reaper was just bowling a ball and bowling them all over, striking everybody out. And I can tell you that stuck in my mind as a younger adult. I kind of thought, far out, there's actually, a lot about this that we don't know, and this is all about personal behaviours, personal choices. The free loving 60s and the experimental 70s can't be the way that we live now. And that's a bit similar to what we've got right now in the 2020s. What we thought we could do people fall back into their old habits of selfishness and lack of concern for other people. They've got it. It's almost like they've got, it's all about me. I don't give a damn about anybody else written on their forehead. So when we've gone back to that, we've got this spike in cases. Of course we're going to have a spike in cases. Of course we're going to continue to have selfish people. But by golly, I feel sorry for and really pity the people who think that somehow they're exempt. That's arrogance that's personified. I'm not going to get COVID-19. I can cough all over you. I can do whatever I want. The second that people have that attitude, karma is going to come back and get them one way or the other. And I'll just share something I learned from about karma many years ago, around 20 years ago. I was newly divorced, and I leased a property that was an interim kind of property, and it was prior to me buying a new home on my own. And I was quite happy with the neighbourhood. It was a short-term leasing arrangement. But as I was moving in, the couple passed the front door, and they were very, very, very friendly, really friendly. Needless to say, because they lived just over the back fence and at a property slightly above mine, they could literally see into my back terrace, backyard. I was the subject of a break and enter, and it was a seriously bad break and enter. There was a lot of stuff stolen. They literally smashed the terrace, the back sliding doors and windows. And the only people who would have known that that was going on was this couple in the home that lived behind me, and who'd been very friendly and asked who I was and where I worked. And I was being openly friendly with them. I wasn't mistrusting and distrusting of them. But that was a very big lesson in karma, because about probably 2 years later, after the police had visited, after the police had interviewed them, after I had seen them a number of times, and they could never look me in the eye after that break and enter. They couldn't look me in the eye. And I knew intuitively that there was something wrong with the way that they had gone about using their power, and that they'd done something quite downright evil. About 2 years after the break and enter, I was walking somewhere right away from where that place was, and I'd moved not long after the break and enter. And the husband half of this couple was walking towards me, and he saw me and immediately attempted to skirt around. And I thought, no, I'm going to just go and be really friendly to this fellow and say, hi, how are you? And as I approached him, I realised that he actually had no voice anymore. He had to use a machine to speak. And I communicated with him, and I said, oh, how is your wife going? And he said, oh, my wife died about a year ago. And I said, oh, I can see you're not well. And he said, yes, and I got cancer about 6 months before she died. And that to me was the karmic lesson. They had spoken up, and obviously, according to the police, they couldn't pin it, but the police knew that this couple had set me up. That couple had arranged for the fellow who lived 2 doors down to climb the fence and get into my property and steal my items. The police had ascertained that much. They'd ascertained the link, but they charged the young fellow, but they couldn't charge the couple. The fact that they spoke out and used their power in the bad way, when what somebody does and how they speak is really, really bad, the universe has a way of correcting what that person does. And for him, he lost his wife, and he developed cancer to the point where he could no longer speak without the support of a machine. And I wasn't horrible to him. I wished him well and said that I trusted that he had a safe life. But my niceness towards him was probably almost a karmic justice as well, in that I didn't have to be nasty, even though I knew the truth. I didn't have to be nasty to him. I chose to be nice to him. And that's, for somebody who does something evil, that's probably the hardest thing that they'll ever have to live with. Because when we expect back what we put out, if you put out evil and you expect it back, when you don't get it back, it's actually very confusing, because we're programmed to believe what you put out you get back. Well, the karma came back, but it didn't mean that I had to treat him badly. That was my choice to use my personal power in a non-destructive way and let the universe take care of what was needed. I'd like you to think about that going forward this week, about how you can modify what you say, what you do. Just if you're tempted to do something that you know is wrong or that you know is disrespectful or hurtful, stop and don't do it, and let the moment pass, and then reevaluate where you are and how you want to communicate and what you want to do. Don't step into that use of personal power in a bad way, because ultimately, as you build up that bank account of negative use of personal power, sooner or later somebody's going to want to zero that balance, zero back to nothing, and that's when karma kicks in. Have a good week. I will see you next weekend, and please wear a mask.